you for letting me ramble on for a bit. The talk is about astrophotography and related stuff, and you can see what you think about the related stuff as we go along. You asked me how long I've been doing this, Paul, and just over a couple of years. I decided I wanted a different challenge, so I went over to the dark side. I wanted to take some nice pictures, and the subject has pretty much sucked me in. So you'll perhaps see that as we go through. But I'd be the first to recognise that astrophotography is not for everybody. I'm still an apprentice. It has been pretty challenging. It's still challenging, and I've got lots and lots to learn just yet. Now, before I do the screen share, one of the first things I did was subscribe to that magazine, Sky at Night, BBC magazine. This one's February 2019. So that pretty much was my starting position. And I shuffled through it, as you do, and I was amazed, and it's topical, bearing in mind yesterday in Gloucestershire, that there was a short story, and I'll just give the gist of it. I can just about see that story there with a meteorite?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And it's looking back the sky at night, 11th of February, 1966. And I'll just get the gist of it, and we'll see who was part of it. On the 11th of February, 66 episode of the Sky at Night, Patrick Moore investigated an intriguing event that had occurred earlier on 24th December 1965. As the residents of Barwell, Leicestershire, were getting ready for Christmas Eve, a flash ripped through the sky, followed by a loud bang, and the village was showered with rocks. A meteor had exploded overhead. Over the next few weeks, hunters flocked to Barwell looking for the space rocks, including Patrick. It rambles on a bit, but there's a short paragraph at the end, and Trevor's not with us tonight, but I'm hoping that Robin can confer. Robin. One person not so happy with a Christmas visitor was Barwell resident Percy England, who found a meteorite sitting in a dent it had made in the bonnet of his car, his brand new car. When insurance refused to pay out, citing an act of God, local legend has it that Mr. England went to a local priest asking for compensation. None was paid. So, do you know, Robin, if that's any relation to Trevor?
I know Trevor knows this guy. He told me about it. It rang a bell the moment you started telling it. I remember him telling me about a year ago, but
okay,
I can't remember the details, so I don't think Trevor's with us
tonight. It's a shame Trevor's not with us.
No.
The talk at the Connie Club, which I'm just going to start in a second, was going to use quite a few props and things to sort of get around the subject. One of them was that. You can just about make that out.
Yeah.
That's approximately the same size as the glitter ball in the Connie Club ceiling. I spoke to the guy that runs it and asked him for the size, and he gave me a size, and that's pretty much it. And the other sample you were going to get one each is one of those, which is a mint. And we'll come back to that in a minute. I think Gary's muted everybody. I think it looks like it. No, he hasn't, but Gary said he would mute, but I'll ask you for questions. If there's something you want to ask, press your space bar or whatever you need to press and shout away. Keep it interactive. So let's have a look at the screen. If we can share. And that one there. Have you got that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's the volume? Is that okay?
Yeah. Fine.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. So here's the start of the talk official. And as I said, that ball was going to be the glitter ball, which is kind of the sun, and the little mint is us, that third rock going outwards, a bit bluey. I think what caught me fairly early on in all of this was everything around us is pretty vast and mind-blowing. It kind of takes your breath away, really. And lots of things talk about size comparisons, which I've just given one. And the other big one they talk about is this light years thing. It's kind of a distance thing, how long the speed of light, how long if you traveled at the speed of light, how far would you get in 1 light year? And it's a silly figure, like just under 6 trillion miles. But an interesting way of comparing it is that the sun sends us its light and it gets to that third rock from the sun in 8 minutes. So that's the kind of speed that light gets to us, and it's used as a comparison in distance, which I'll allude to as we go on. Before I hit the next slide, the first bit of bad news is our sun is kaput in 4.5 billion years. It'll run out of fuel, it'll fizzle out, and that's it. No more sun. So that's the first bit of bad news tonight. Gary told me to just hold when I'm speaking before when I turn a slide over, because I think it's a connection issue. So tell me if you're not getting the slides soon enough. So one of the other very early things I did was join the Leicester Astronomy Society. Meets at this place. Well, it did pre-lockdown. Every other Tuesday was a meeting, about the same sort of time as our meetings, a couple of hours, speakers, talks, lots of debates, quite a big society. There's probably, I'm guessing, 70 to 90 members, and there's usually 45, 50 at meetings. So it's quite a nice society. And we've been doing Zoom calls and things through lockdown. So we had a Zoom meeting last night. So what else I did early on was I bought a second-hand telescope, a red head torch, and I bought a double chin as well. Now, the red head torch thing is all about seeing something in the dark when you're fiddling around. And if you step outdoors and go and look at the night sky, it'll probably take you 20 to 25 minutes for your eyes to dark adapt to the night sky. So you can't just rush out and see everything in the sky. If you go out wrapped up, have a look, you'll see more and more things appearing in the sky if you stop out there beyond about 20 minutes. And you've still got a red light to see what's happening without blowing open your eyes again and then starting over again with another 20 minutes. Here's one of my other early problems. Between that street light and the fence, which is my garden fence, there's a road. So that street light is shining straight at me in the position in the middle of my garden I wanted to put a telescope up. It took me 8 emails with lots of councils and all sorts. I kept asking for a switch that I could switch it off when I wanted, but they wouldn't play ball on that one. And eventually, the Highways Authority gave me a front screen on that street light. So it can be done if you've got a problem yourself. They say they're downlighters, but it's pretty much a side lighter as far as I was concerned. I've picked up there a first quarter crescent moon with Venus to the right of it. And the shape you see of the unlit part of the moon is from Earth shine, the reflection back off the Earth to the sun, giving you the outline. That one, another simple couple of seconds shot. I think I did it one January night, 6 o'clock at night, tripod. There's noise in the sky, I can see that. But the event, which was sort of catalogued in that magazine of that particular month, was a fourth quarter crescent moon. So it's starting to wane. And the two bright objects the brighter one on the left is Venus, the less bright one is Jupiter. So you quite often see quite bright things in your sky and think, oh, it's a bright star tonight, but more often than not, it's a planet shining away. Now, the plan for this picture was to get the International Space Station coming out of my lilac bush, and it's moving at 17,000 miles an hour. I wanted it to pass through the Orion constellation, which is those three, that one, and a bunch of others, but they're the main ones. And I wanted sharp stars. I knew where the space station was going to appear that night because, and you can do this yourselves, if you look up Spot the Station, which is a NASA website, and put in your postcode, they will send you alerts as to when the space station is in your neck of the woods. So it's been around for the last few days here, but it's been at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I think I took this one, it was about 6:30 of an evening, so it varies its time. You may get it for a couple of weeks and then it's gone for months before it comes back again in your part of the world. The other thing I kind of remembered was we'd had quite a few speakers at the Connie Club about the rule of 500, which is where you take the figure of 500, you divide it by your focal length, and that'll tell you what length you can take of the night sky without stars trailing. So this was probably, I don't know, 20mm lens or something. 500 divided into 20 gives you 25 seconds maximum exposure without trails. And I pretty much guessed it was going to be a lot longer than that. So one thing I did was set my camera up on a tracking mount, the bottom part of a tripod, and it follows the night sky when you set it up. And I did some test exposures just to see how long a trail would be before I started to overexpose the sky. And I worked out a bit before the space station was due to appear that it was going to be about 9-10 second exposures, and then I had to stop and start again. And I repeated that right through that particular picture, but I've only used about 10 frames. So there's 10 times 10 seconds, about 100 seconds of time in that trail. It had obviously some gaps in it, which I've cloned the gaps up. But the NASA website is pretty good. It will say it'll appear at your location at 5:46 a.m. And it'll appear 10 degrees above southwest, rise to 50 degrees and go down in the east, taking 4.5 minutes to do it. It's quite detailed, so you know where to point your camera in the first place. Dead interesting, I thought, maybe to some, is that NASA sent up, just before Christmas actually, a new $23 million toilet. So all of you plumbers that are listening tonight are wondering, how does a toilet work in zero gravity where everything floats about? Is that right? Well, this talk is going to tell you. The one they sent up was an American one. There are already 2 Russian toilets on the space station, and I'll bet they don't say "have a nice day" when you're finished. And what an astronaut would need to do in the event is they strap their feet into some little buckles at the bottom so that they don't wander off halfway through. And looking up the toilet, wait for it, is a camera to ensure correct alignment. Now, I don't know if the Russian ones have got zeniths at the bottom, who knows? But anyhow, can you just imagine sitting down and there's a video screen at the side telling you whether you're on or off? And there's also a big vacuum pipe and fans to do the extraction part. And the liquidy stuff is recycled in the space station. Cheers. and the solidy stuff is compacted and jettisoned to fall back to the earth and burn up. Now, tomorrow morning, when you look out your curtains and it's a bit rubbish out there and you think to yourself, oh, the weather don't half look crap today, please remember this talk. Star trails. Ever so easy to do. Camera, tripod, an intervalometer, which is a timer. I'm waving one about at the minute, and I'll show it in the break if somebody really wants to see about one of those. 10, 12 quid, not very dear. You point in the direction of north. Polaris is at the center, and I will come back to Polaris later, showing you how to find it. And you click away. And the settings on this one, I thought you might want to know. That picture has got 120 frames of 30 seconds f8. And I think the ISO might have been 800. What I did with the results was to, and I wasn't out there, I went in for a coffee, left it running. The result I put into Lightroom initially and just tidied up a little bit and did a sync across those images. I took it then into Photoshop as layers, and I can tell you it takes a pretty long time. Messed about with the blending mode, not much else, and shipped it back into Lightroom and just tidied up some colors and stuff. And that gave the trails. Polaris at the center is that brighter one there, and you can see from that picture, it's doing a little circle. It's not exactly at the north celestial pole, if you like, where the axis of the earth hits the sky. It does a little circle. One good thing I can tell you about that picture is I took that just early in lockdown 1. So amazingly, for an exposure of an hour, not one plane went through. So that's something about lockdown, isn't it? I'd done a previous one where before lockdown, and there were 12 planes going through, and I tried to clone them out, but it's nigh on impossible. It's a deep sky object through a telescope. It's got a category number of M13, and the M stands for Messier, some 1700 Charles Messier, astronomer chappie, who put together quite an extensive catalogue of deep sky things. What you're seeing is a cluster of stars. It can be seen in the night sky if you've got some binoculars as a bit of a sort of small hazy glow. But that center bit, there's probably about 500,000 stars in that region, in that point. Not a great picture. It's one of my early ones. And remember the 8 minutes of the light to us from sun. The light from that cluster has taken 22,000 years to get to the Earth. A composite. 2 pictures. Big one at the top needs no introduction. Took it with video through a telescope, and a lot of the planetary subjects, moons, videos, sun, are more recommended to take with video and stack those. And the bottom one is a lovely thing in the night sky, the Pleiades, which is a group of stars. You can see the smudgy haze in the sky right now, if it wasn't cloudy. It's certainly in the sky for a month or so yet before it disappears and comes back about next November. And the Pleiades have got this blue, hazy, swirly look about them. The swirls that you can see there are nebulosity from when the star was formed, and it's sort of shedding off all the dust and things that are in its creation. But it is a glorious thing to look at in the sky. Distance for light-wise, light reflected back off the moon, less than 2 seconds. Light from that Pleiades thing, about 450 years. So back when Elizabeth I was on the throne. And I think in this talk, there are about 3 pictures that I didn't take, and this was the second one. The first was a title. And I found it, and I thought it quite nicely tells you what's up in there about stars. Now, when they're born, they're raging hot. They're this bluey color. So the Pleiades ones I've just showed were in that vein. And bit by bit over the life of a star, it turns color because it's burning the fuel that's inside it. And our sun is somewhere around the sort of yellowy, orangey section at the moment. We'll look at a red one later on, and red is towards the end of the life of a star. Now, stars at the end of the day are giant spheres of super hot gas. And in that, hydrogen is being converted to helium, and it's a nuclear fusion process going on. And some of them, if they're big enough, will make massive explosions in the sky. Some will just fizzle out. Our sun, when it packs in 4.5 billion years, will just run out of fuel. The outer layers will just shed away, and it'll just fade away. That's what will happen. Again, an early, not brilliant picture, but what kind of shapes can you see in it? Press your space button and tell me what you see. Okay. Officially, it's the Eagle Nebula, but it's occasionally called the Ghost Nebula. If that, I prefer the Ghost to the Eagle myself. It's a long way away, 7,000 years in light terms, and the size of that red hydrogen area nebulosity is probably, it would accommodate about 60 solar systems. So our solar system, 60 times in that. So it's pretty darn big. I've seen some wonderful pictures of the center, that sort of, I don't know what it looks like, a squirrel in the middle. That's called the Pillars of Creation. And Hubble, the Hubble Space Telescope, I've seen some fabulous pictures of that from space where you're away from the light pollution, and it'll be a dream to end up with a really good picture one day of that. Hubble, by the way, is being replaced this year. They're decommissioning it, and the new one's called the James Webb Telescope. That's going up later this year.
Rob?
Yeah?
How did you take that picture?
So that's on a DSLR camera.
Yeah.
I think that was I think it was a modified I took that night, and I'll come back to the modified camera later. Through, I think it was a 1250 focal length telescope, straight into the camera, and it would have had exposures probably of around 3/4 of a minute, and I probably did about 20, 25 and stacked them.
Is it cropped at all?
I've cropped it already quite a bit, so I've deliberately not cropped anymore because it really does, it goes to pieces. So it was probably about 1/10 of the size in my picture. I've cropped it just to try and get a bit of an image.
Yeah, I was just wondering how big it looks like when you actually viewing it through the telescope.
It would on the back of a DSLR screen. It's probably no more than about 4 or 5 mil diameter.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So, what the heck is that? You all say. Well, that's a stack of 75 raw images through a 30 megapixel DSLR. Each of them were 45 seconds. ISO 800 through an 840mm telescope. F7 is the rating on that. I didn't use any 2x, 3x converters. That's what you see. And this object its light gets to us after it's traveled 2.5 million years. It's the most distant thing you can see in the night sky with the naked eye, but I'd suggest you probably still need a darkish sort of sight to do it. And I stacked it in an astronomy bit of software called Deep Sky Stacker. It's free, you can download it, you can play with it. And the result, after quite a bit of work in Photoshop, was that. If I just toggle, you'll see the light in the middle. There it is. And the Andromeda Galaxy is the same sort of structure as the Milky Way that we live in. A spiral galaxy with lots of arms and things swirling around. The big bright thing in the center is a black hole, and I'm glad that Jules has joined us because she's an expert in black holes, is Jules. No comment, Jules? I'll tell you why.
No
I'll let everybody. Do you know why you're an expert in black holes?
No.
Okay. Well, at the last Camera Club Christmas do, you sat near to me opposite Phil and James, and at one point you said in your best posh accent, "I don't bloody understand black holes. Can we get back to photography?" You said.
Thanks very much for reminding me, Robert.
No problem at all. So are you listening to the definition of a black hole, Jules?
I am.
Good, good, good. A black hole is an area of space where the gravitational strength is so great, nothing can escape from it. So if it was that strong on Earth, we'd be flat on the floor. You wouldn't be able to raise a finger. It would be so intense. And it usually happens at the end of a massive collapse of a star. And it gives this enormous force. Now, the definition says not even light can escape from it, which kind of confuses me because there's a big bright light in the middle. My assumption is that there's a huge polo mint of light around the center that's kind of blowing out everything, including the black hole. But that's kind of the definition of it, the Andromeda Galaxy. Those are the two small galaxies above and below. So that one up there is a small sub-galaxy, and that one there, but I can't remember the numbers. I'd have to look them up. A bit more bad news, chaps, sorry. The Andromeda Galaxy is heading towards us at 10 miles a second. That's coming towards us, that is. And luckily also, because it's 2.5 million light years away, it won't get to us until 4 billion years time, which is a bit shorter than the sun going out. So we've still got a bit of time left just yet. So in the last picture, stars were reasonably sharp. How do you get sharp stars? These things are called Bartinov masks, and that's spelled Bahtinov, invented by some Russian geezer. Bartinov masks. There's 3 different sizes there, but you get loads of different sizes. And what you do is you put the appropriate one on the end of a telescope. The little one bottom left will actually go on the end of a zoom lens size-wise. And the first thing you see when you look through a telescope, or even if I've got a DSLR on the end of the telescope, this is the view I'd get in live view. I do a 10 times live view, it's out of focus on a sharp star, it looks like that. Twiddle with your focus knob and you get that. So it's to do with a light diffraction through those louvers, those Bartinov mask louvers. So they're quite handy things. Would they have been any good for general photography? Probably not. You just crank up the live view and get get a good view through that. But for long distance, bright specks of light, you can't tell whether you're in focus or not. Okay, that particular night, which, looking at the title down the bottom of my screen, I don't know if you see that, it says Saturn Jupiter 20th of the 7th 2020, sorry. That's when I took it, back in July. We had many months of Saturn and Jupiter in that sort of position or a little bit higher in the sky. I'm sorry about the light pollution. That's looking pretty much south from my garden. The lady opposite didn't think I was looking into her bedroom window. The police have been round. The two to look out for, that's Saturn and that's Jupiter. So Jupiter's quite a bit brighter than Saturn, and it's kind of in front of it with the other one following behind. I took this picture just with a mobile phone. So you can see the red cast down below. That's my red head torch, just to give a bit of illumination on the telescope and the direction I'm looking in. Pretty rubbish, but the shape kind of gives it a bit away. Saturn's 800 million miles away. A little bit of definition, but not great. And what I did with that one is I put a small CCD camera on the end of a telescope, and I will show that later. And I took 3,000 frames of video. Now that sounds like, well, that sounds a lot, but it was running at about 60, 70 frames a second. So it's half a minute, 40 seconds of actual video time, straight into a laptop, and then it was stacked up afterwards in a slightly different product called Auto Stackert, free, download it, play with it. It needs more magnification at the taking stage, because I've cropped it quite a bit and it started to lose detail, but a fascinating sort of place. Now the other one, Jupiter, that was on that same night I took this, and that was 3,000 frames of video of the planet, and I exposed it so I could just about see the rings that are going around Jupiter itself. And then I increased the exposure to pick out those 4 moons of Jupiter that you can see in the picture. And obviously that second one completely blew out Jupiter. It was just a white disk. So stack the Jupiter picture, the planet, and then stack the 4 moon picture, combine them in Photoshop, and probably it wants to come down in brightness a bit, the planet, but I quite liked it at the time. The bands that you can see going around Jupiter are storm bands. Jupiter's a massive place. It's a lot bigger than us. It is spinning much faster than us. So we rotate in 24 hours. Jupiter turns around in 10 hours. So on Earth, our surface speed is about 1,000 miles an hour. On Jupiter, it's 27,000 miles an hour. So a very stormy place. Jupiter's got 79 moons. So we're a bit underwhelmed with our one, 79 of them. But these 4 are quite close in and well up there with astrophotographers as a thing to do. And the reason you know which one's which, and they're their names on the bottom. Ganymede's about 1.5 times the size of our moon. But the way I know which was where on that particular night is that the Sky at Night magazine at the start, every month, shows the position of these 4 moons in a bit of a spiral helix going around Jupiter through the month. So all you have to do is look up the day you took the picture and you'll know which one is in which position. that's called the Dumbbell Nebula. It's kind of dumbbelly shape in the middle. It's also called the Bubble Nebula. I prefer the bubble. It's also called the Apple Core Nebula. It's got one of these messier numbers, M27. The area of that bubble is about 3 times the size of our solar system. So I've not said it before, but the solar system's about 1 light year across from complete diameter. So you get about 3 of them in there. The light's from 1200 years ago. So good old Alfred the Great was King of Wessex when that light left that place in the sky. The little one on the left is the Ring Nebula. It's in various nighttime catalogues. There's not just the Messier catalogue, there's the NGC, which is the New Group catalogue. There's an IC Index catalogue. There's a Coldwell catalogue. Now that one's quite interesting. Going back to the start where I talked about Patrick Moore turning up at Barwell, the Coldwell catalogue was put together by Patrick Moore because he was born Patrick Colwell Moore. So that just goes to show what double barrel names can do for you, Jules. So, that's a nice one to go for. Again, it wants really high magnification to get a really close-up, sharp image of it. But the stars are fairly sharp, and I'd push that. They're minute exposures in the night sky, and I think I did about 30 to get that shot. I'm mindful of the time now. That one's called the Eastern Veil Nebula. It's the remains of a star about 20 times of ours, and it went supernova and imploded donkeys years ago. And those wispy strands, so where I'm pointing now to where I'm pointing there, the width of that wispiness is 4 billion miles, just to give an idea of size. About 2,500 light years away, that one. Right, let me just darken that a bit if I can. It's gone a bit. This is the back of Peckleton Church. It's a dark, spooky place. It'd probably be brilliant as a dogging site or something like that. But before Paul asks me, I haven't got a dog. So I've been there quite a bit, solo, on my own, fiddling around in the dark. And that particular night was one of the magazine mentioned phenomenon, which was that Jupiter and Saturn were going to be 10 degrees either side of the moon. So 10 degrees, and this is where you all help out. If you, as per me, if you stretch your arm out fully, everybody stretch an arm out fully, please, and make a fist, make a fist. As you look at your fist in the night sky, that's 10 degrees. So a bit of geometry there. So that particular night, Jupiter on the right was 10 degrees to the right of the moon. Saturn, bless it, was 10 degrees to the left, right behind that black streaky cloud and not as much illuminated as Jupiter. So I was there about 3 hours, and in the end, it was impossible. The clouds rolled in, and I was not going to get both of them. Obviously, that's Earl Shilton you can see behind. A lunar eclipse, so an eclipse of the moon, which was top down. Again at Peckleton, couple of hours there, the clouds were coming and going, you got fleeting glimpses, and it wasn't a full eclipse. It was about the maximum eclipse in the top down, with the Earth's shadow making it. I finished up there 11:30 one night. If you know the car park at the church, there were 20 sheep stood at the fence at the side of me, watching me closely. A fox ran past my feet. and there was a scream out of the graveyard which convinced me it was time to go. Okay, another night there. It's a bit grainy, but I set out initially just to do a shot of Orion, the constellation Orion, which I've already touched on, in the night sky above a tractor. So there's a lot of light pollution going on there, which I think is all down towards Lutterworth and Magna Park. But Orion, as I pointed out before, is the three in the middle there, that one at the top, that one at the bottom, are the main stars that give you that shape. Those stars in themselves make an asterism. An asterism is a noticeable shape in the night sky, and we'll do another one in a moment. But the full constellation of Orion the Hunter is all these stars out here, and the Greeks made up this picture of a bloke with his hunting gear hunting. The three in the middle are his belt, the top one's in his neck, and the bottom one's in his ankle. One to point out here, and it's a giant red star. That one at the top there doesn't look very red, but it is when you look at it closely. That star is called Betelgeuse. If you're American, you'd say Beetlejuice, but that's Betelgeuse. Now, going back to the glitter ball in the Connie Club and my exercise ball down here, Betelgeuse, I've worked out, would be about 28 times the width of the Connie Club building, the whole building. It would be that much bigger. It's enormous. It's 820 million miles diameter. And if you place that where our sun was, it would stretch out beyond Jupiter. It's a monster. And it's likely to run out of its fuel in about 100,000 years' time. And at that point, geeks predict that it'll implode with such an enormous force that it creates a black hole, Jules. And but a big black hole. And people on Earth will see it as pretty much a full moon for months on end before it starts to tone down a bit. Also to show you in the picture is that one down there. So not quite following those three down, but sort of. That bright star there is the brightest star in the night sky anywhere on Earth. It's called Sirius. Its nickname is the dog star. It comes up in pub quizzes. You'll quite often hear it in pub quizzes. What's the proper name for the dog star? And it's dog star because it's in a constellation Canis Major, which means large dog, hence the dog star. There's another one above called the small dog, but it's out of this picture. I'm going to show you now that little glow there, which I'm just pointing at now, is the next picture. So that's the Orion Nebula. There's lots of nebulas in the Orion constellation, but this is a kind of classic one. I think it looks like a flying turkey. I don't know if you've got that. It's an area probably 24 times the size of the solar system. Lots of red nebulosity, which is hydrogen. Lots of black nebulosity. The big white intensive center is where thousands of stars are being born from material and gases and all sorts, just in the way our star was born. There's nebulosity going off the picture over here. And the picture itself was, I think it was 40 times 1 minute exposures. But what made the difference, and you can see lots of different colors in the stars in this one. What made the real difference was it was onto a DSLR camera, but I had a dual narrowband filter in between that allowed the passage of hydrogen alpha and oxygen wavelengths. And it's a common filter in astronomy to get that. A quick recap, give it another 10 minutes. A quick recap of where we were. I'm going to take you now just to the left of that one there. That star there is called Alnitak, and it's in the next picture. It's very grainy. It was an early picture, and that area there is called the Flame Nebula because it kind of looks like a bit of a flame. That's that star Alnitak, and just to below the star is this shape here, which is black nebula, but luckily has a backdrop of bright nebula to silhouette it. It's called the Horsehead Nebula, and it's one of the sort of icons of the night sky. So that's one picture I'll give you of it. And only 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did the next one, and it's only taken me 6 months to crack it, but I've now cracked guiding a telescope using a computer, as opposed to the mechanical gears that were away in the mount. I can probably do 1.25 minutes maximum before we start to trail. But this is 4-minute exposures. I think there was, I think I did 30 there. I quite like the black and white conversion. I'll have another go at the image at some point in color, but I thought it brought out the horse head a little bit better on that one. That horse head would accommodate 12 solar systems, would fit into the shape of that horse head. Okay, yep, we'll do a couple more, then we'll have a break. An asterism, a shape in the sky there. And does anybody not know what it is? Press your space bar if you know a different name for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ursa Major.
Ursa Major, yeah.
Okay. The shape is sometimes called the Panhandle, the Big Dipper, the Plough, obviously. It's part of the Ursa Major constellation, the Great Bear. So a great load of this area up here, these are part of that constellation of Ursa Major. Ursa Minor doesn't show up very well, but Ursa Minor is the ones I'm doing now, coming down there. The sort of 4 there and the 3 going up there. That's Ursa Minor, the small bear. But with a backdrop of Peckleton Village there, Ursa Major is one of 88 constellations in the night sky. And 40 of them were charted by astronomers in the first 2 centuries. So it just shows you how long people have been drawing the night sky. It would rotate over 24 hours. So that bright point there, which is Polaris, if you took a compass around the Plough, over 24 hours, you can do a complete circle around Polaris and come back again because of the rotation of us on Earth. So the 2 end stars, which have Arabic names from the 1st century, Dub and Merak, they point straight up there towards that bright sky. So if you're looking to do star trails and you'll think, which one's Polaris, just follow those 2 up and they'll go straight to it, and you can center that wherever you want it in your picture. There's a load of nebulas around here. You can't see them in this picture, but about where I'm putting the cursor is that one. A couple of galaxies, 12 million years for the light from the Bode Galaxy and the Cigar Galaxy to get to us. Probably took 45-second exposures, 40 of them, stacked them. A lot of astronomy is long exposures and stacking. You tend to find that's what goes on. Nearly there for a break. Over in the graveyard, about, I don't know, 10:30 at night on my little own. The tripod is at the bottom front there, and it's taken 120 exposures looking over the parapets of star trails. I took this photograph with an old Canon 60D, which I've had modified. The IR cut filter was taken out, and it's a common thing astronomy people do to enhance red nebulae in the night sky. But the result is you get pinky red pictures like you've got there if you try and use the camera for an ordinary camera. You've had it once it's been converted. But I left it this color just to show you what the effect would be. And the last slide before a break, I'd suggest, is this rubbish result. It was pitch black. I was trying to get focus on the parapets, and I didn't do a very good job of that. I think about 12 mil focal length, shooting away, not sharp, and there's the planes going through. So it wasn't in lockdown, it was before lockdown, and there's about 12 planes all going, flashing through right, left and center. On that rubbish note, should we have a break, Paul?
Yeah, that's fine, that's great.
Let me just, how do I stop sharing? How do I stop the screen? Probably by dropping this. Oh, I see. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Rob. Thanks very much.
Right, I left you there, which is rubbish. So let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. And why doesn't that want to click on? Doesn't want to go. There we go. Okay. So a bit better, but in Australia. And it's obviously not Polaris in the middle. It's a little, you can't even see the star in the middle. It's called Sigma Octantis.
Rob,
yeah.
press your F key. You'll make the picture bigger for us.
F. Oh, okay. Well done. Why didn't you tell me at the start?
I did type it, but you didn't see it.
Okay. So the one in the center, which I couldn't see in terms of lining up some sort of picture, but what they've got in Australia, and I know quite a few of you have been there, the Southern Cross is kind of over here somewhere, and it's a, I don't know, rectangular sort of bunch of stars, and somebody told me to join up two diagonally to the ground and then go back up again, and that's where the south is. So it's a bit hit and miss. Same settings that I've told you before, 120, 30 seconds, f8, across water to an island that's got some cars going up and down on it. Graham talked in the break about bits in the air. So there's some bits up there I can see, if you can see those, Graham.
Yeah, yeah.
And some odd bits down there. Then they're not the space station. I think they're kind of debris and a few, they might be some sort of light effect, but I think that's probably some bits of rubbish coming down. It's probably some somebody's flushed the toilet in the space station again. And we were staying for a few days, about a quarter of a mile from where I took that last one. And it was darker than here. There's still glow in the sky from the nearby town. And the reason I took it, just to show that Orion chap, there's the three in the middle. There's Betelgeuse, the big one that's now at the bottom, not at the top. And there's Regal, which was at the bottom, now it's at the top. So the whole thing's flipped over in the southern hemisphere. Orion Nebula, that's that one about there. And the Flame Nebula, that's about there. 12mm lens. I think it was something like, how long did I take on it? About a minute exposure. And you can see stars trailing. Look at the corners, and there's loads of sausages up there. The nature of the wide angle will do that, but so will too long an exposure. Right, back at Auntie's house, which is probably about, I don't know, 60 miles from Melbourne. And I didn't get many nights of this, but one night I looked out and I thought, blimey, there's the Milky Way in a quite highly light polluted area. There's plenty of light pollution above the trees, street lights going on, but I managed, and I was quite pleased, I got an essence of the Milky Way, the sort of trail going through and slightly pinky and that sort of thing. But I'm told you have to go in really dark places to get the Milky Way properly. I think it was a big ISO, I don't know, 5,000. It was a couple of seconds because it was going to trail the sky, and that's what happened there. Let's move on to that one. A slightly different view. The monkeys left the lights on. The essence of the Milky Way is there. I've gone to black and white, and I didn't know till I got home that glow up there is not aliens. That's a dwarf galaxy on the outside of the Milky Way called the Magellanic Cloud, discovered by that Magellan sailor bloke. It only appears in the southern hemisphere. We don't see it up north. So my last and third one of somebody else's pictures. I can't enlarge it. I was hoping to go bigger, Gary. Not to worry. So that's the Milky Way, and we're that tiny little dot that says you are here, like a sign in a park. That little white glow is the whole of the solar system. If I had a spaceship that could travel at the speed of light, one side to the other would take about 100,000 years. That's the sort of size of it. We live in the Orion arm of the Milky Way, so all these swirls have got different names. Certainly Orion keeps coming up, doesn't it? But if you look at the white spot, the Pleiades we talked about earlier, there's the Horsehead Nebula and the Flame Nebula there down in that region. There's the Dumbbell Nebula we talked about, which is the bubbly one. The North American Nebula, the Eastern Veil I showed you, is part of that complex. The Ring Nebula is going further out. The Eagle Nebula, the ghosty one, that's there. That's 22,000 light years from there down to here. There's Jules's black hole in the middle. And I think that's it. I've not had a go at the bottom down here. There's a Rotten Egg Nebula. I've heard that one stinks, so I'm not going to do that one. Okay. No guessing for saying that's the sun. A complete disk of white light taken in white light through a telescope and mega warnings. Don't look through a telescope, your binoculars, a camera at the sun, because you'll probably be getting a guide dog. It's intensive. That's with a solar filter on the front of a telescope. You can't see through this filter. You hold it to the light and it just sort of shows the sun glowing a bit through it, but it protects your eyes. Took it about probably a year ago, which was probably at the lowest point of the sun in its activity. It follows an 11-year cycle of no activity to very active, where there's lots of flares and solar spots and magnetic eruptions going on. So that's a boring white image of the sun. But if you buy a solar telescope, which I've got one, it's hydrogen alpha based, and you look through it and you have to tune it to the wavelength, and you start to see the granulations of the chromosphere, which is actually above the white light layer of the sun, and all these granulations. Again, I've enlarged it a bit. There are some bubbles around the edges, which would be small prominences, flares off the surface. There's no big sunspots going on where you get the eruptions of the magnetic fields. But that's maybe for another time. My telescope is quite first entry telescope into the sun. But I went along on a course on imaging the sun, and the guy let me take a bit of video through his 8 grand telescope. and that's a prominence, a flare off the surface of the sun, which is probably 10,000 miles high, flaring up above the sun. The earlier pictures of the sun showed the temperature to be, I don't know, 10,000 degrees centigrade, which it may be at the surface, but I've been told it's probably 1,000,000 degrees centigrade up in those flares and in the upper atmosphere. And the sun, miraculously, sends us the solar wind. Now, the solar wind is charged particles in the atmosphere through the space, and they're kind of electrons and all those electrically things. They come to the Earth and they react with magnetism, which is strongest at the North and South Pole. So this was bobbing around on a boat going up Norway coast. And in those bobbing out, I couldn't do an exposure more than about 2 seconds at very high ISO, hence it's a very muddy picture. And when you took the picture, you couldn't actually see the green in the sky, but then you looked on what you'd taken and it brought out the green. But I wouldn't recommend going on a boat trip to see the Northern Lights because it's very, very hard. A couple of times in the middle of the night, it did pull into a quayside somewhere. And while they're clanging and banging, taking stuff off, because they're working boats, the Hurtigruten ones, it was stable. And there were some nearby industrial buildings and sheds and things. And I was able to push this to more like 8-9 seconds, lower ISOs. And again, I couldn't see it in the night sky, but it came out when I processed it. Another one in a dock, similar settings, and I managed to pick out some of the veils, the swirly bits of veils in the Northern Lights, which again I couldn't see them in the night sky, but I could see them when I processed them. So tonight's mystery object, precious space bar. Tell me what you think. Ignore the red spots; they're hot pixels.
Neptune.
Keep going.
Uranus.
Correct, that man. That's a picture of Uranus. A single image. One night I decided fairly late to find it in the night sky on my tracking mount, and it was just about to go behind a big tree. So it was a single image, 2,000 million miles away, of Uranus. I'll show when we come back to the end the sort of relative size of that to the sun when we finish up. It takes that one, we go around the sun in 1 year. Uranus takes 84 Earth years to go all the way around the sun. And it's obviously an ice planet because the sun's heat can't get anywhere near it. Mystery item number 2, please. Come on, Paul.
Let's go the way Venus.
Good lad. Well done. Well done, you. That was
jamming.
Venus. I don't know if I've got the, because I've done full screen, I can't see the date. It was, I think, about March last year. The magazine said that Venus goes through a peculiar phenomenon for about 2 months where it looks like a crescent rather than a full-blown round disc. And it did exactly that. And the theory is it's something to do with making a shadow across itself, which I don't get that at all, but that's actually the sort of bluey green of Venus. Well done, Andy. Kit. The one on the left, the orangey one, was my first buy off eBay, 500 quid, computer tracking, 1250mm focal length lens. What else can I say? I bought it with a battery pack and some magazines and some eyepieces. And I thought 500 quid was good because brand new, they were probably about 800 quid then. Then sadly, a member of the astronomy club passed away, and his friend at the club got the job of trying to clear out some of his old rubbish by his widow. And the one on the right that says Mead on it, this gentleman said, why don't you have a look at this? It could be good. So that one cost me 100 quid for a 10-inch diameter, 1000mm focal length f4 lens, basically. It's a lens, isn't it? So the light comes in the top, which you can see with a cap on, goes all down to an enormous mirror at the bottom, comes back up and out the side. It weighs just under 20 kilos. It's heavy. So I had to go and buy the mount below the white one in the center. Just the mount initially I bought, and that mount can take up to 25 kilos. But I had a hell of a game with this scope, collimating it. You have a little laser collimator that you put through the eyepiece hole, and you adjust various screws, knobs and things to try and get the light to be centered. And every time I did it, the next time it moved again. So I had 6 months of grief with that until I bought the white one sitting on top of the white mount, which is a refractor type telescope. The light comes in one end and goes straight out the other end. The two previous I've talked about are reflector telescopes where it bounces around mirrors and things. So there's a triplet lens in that top one there, going out to the bottom. Less magnification, 840mm f7, but it's lovely. It's got a lovely smooth action on the focuser you can see at the bottom for either viewing or putting DSLR on the end, or whatever. The orangey bit with the caps on the top, I'll show you that at the end if we get time, and I'll explain that. But the bright red bit at the bottom is a very low megapixel CCD camera, which you can connect to PCs. The other one in the middle between the two observatories is the solar telescope. It's, I don't know, 300mm focal length. The red band in the middle has got a big knob on the other side. You can't see that you turn it and twiddle it until you get the chromosphere showing all that orange peel stuff on the what's the name. And on the top, you can't make it out, but there's a little U-shaped bracket, which is like a pinhole thing. The sun comes through onto a target, so you can line it up with that at the sun without looking through the hole at the same time. Right, we're going to finish up on the moon. This was only about a week or so ago. This is the snow moon, named by North American tribesmen who always saw it in March, and it was always snow on the ground. So that's why it got the name snow moon. Our moon does a 27.3 day cycle. Get that? Nothing to do with 24 hours or 28 days, 27.3. How daft is that? And it's tomorrow morning it's around, but you won't see it because of the weather, but it's gone into a morning moon at the moment. My original hope was that we were going to have a clear night, and I was going to transfer the screen to the telescope and give you a view through a telescope, but best played lands and mice and men, and it's in the morning and the sky's rubbish anyway. Centuries ago, people on Earth thought those dark areas were water. So they got Latin names around the word sea. So Mare is sea in Latin. So I'll only use the English versions. So top one there is the Sea of Serenity, Tranquility, Fertility, Crisis, Nubium, Nubium and Imbrium at the top. And only while I buy it, if you can see my cursor, that little white dot, can we see that? Yes. Slightly above that by about 1.5 miles was where Apollo 11 landed and Armstrong stepped out. The other three things you can probably see easily and just with a naked eye is the one at the bottom, crater called Tycho, that splatter there, which is Copernicus, and the clearer round one there, which is called Plato. They're all about 70 miles diameter, the moon being about 2,000. And you can see the way the, some pretty big asteroid has splattered into that and given all these splatter marks in that area. The other side of the moon is pretty much just craters, like an area like this. You haven't got these big dark areas on the other side. And that's supposed to be one of the main reasons why the Earth doesn't spin, because the surface has these dark rocky area. It's basalt rock that's bubbled to the surface, and it creates a stronger gravitational pull to the Earth and tends to keep it aligned to us. I'm going to close in on two areas, one around there, I'm circling, and one down the bottom here, just for a bit of fun. The top one there, I want to darken that a bit. Oh, not darken. Tell me. So you've got that sea of serenity there, tranquility, the little white dot where Armstrong stepped out and said his words. But while I was messing about with the moon, I found out that those two craters there, the bigger one and the little one, that's about 30 miles diameter, that's about 10 miles diameter. The bigger one's called Plinius, after some Greek geezer. And the little one, wait for it, is Dawes crater, D-A-W-E-S, as in our own Mike Dawes. So I was quite chuffed to have found that, and I'm pretty certain he would have enjoyed that little bit of information. Maybe I should Photoshop it and put a sweating drummer inside it or something like that. But I was quite pleased that we managed to get Mike Dawes' name out there. Named after an 1800 British vicar, William Dawes, who did research into the atmosphere on Mars. They named a crater after him. That's good, isn't it? And down the bottom bit, taken with video, probably about 1,000 frames. And through a telescope, those CCD cameras really do give quite big enlargement. It's a lot more close in that you see. Tycho, one of those early ones I pointed out, is that one there with a circle. And you can just about see the splatter marks coming off it. And Tycho's one like a few others. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there, there's one at the bottom there. And if you remember those classic pictures of dropping a pebble in a glass of milk, and it all comes up the middle like a little eruption and a spot of milk on the top, that's the effect of an asteroid hitting the surface. And as it bounces off, it brings up some material in the center, just like the milk pictures. The one there, which is about 200 miles diameter, I'm circling with lots of little ones inside it, is again one of the classic pictures to take. It's called Clavius crater, and the two craters in the middle, which are getting some side lighting, you can see there, they're called the eyes of Clavius. And I didn't point out, sorry, on the last picture, the line of black down the left-hand side here, between dark and light, is called the terminator. So when the terminator crosses those two little craters there, it's known as the eyes of Clavius peeping over the top of the shadow. And it's one of the sort of classic pictures to take on the bucket list. I like spooky moons. Can you imagine the man in the moon sat in that C shape with his fishing rod? And again, on the terminator, the line of dark and light, you get some nice crunchy details and some nice shadows inside craters. Not particularly, I think it was probably about an 80th of a second, but I had to put a moon filter in the train, similar to probably a 5 or a 6 stopper. It is something like that. It's quite a thick filter to take out the intensity of the light. Okay. last slide. Apollo. Last year, which is when I was first going to do this talk, was the 50th anniversary of Apollo. So it's been in and out of the news quite a bit. Number 11, which was Mr. Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin jumping out and doing their thing on July the 20th, 1969. Gosh, remember that on telly. 12 and 14, stick with me, are in the Frey-Moro region of the moon. There's Copernicus we talked about. There's Plato. There's Tycho. 13's out there because 13 didn't quite make it. It approached the moon. They had an oxygen tank fire, went round the back of the moon and slingshotted back to the Earth. And in the film, which I don't think I've actually seen the film, but I'm sure many of you have seen the Apollo 13 film with whoever it was. And in that, Hollywood turned it into Houston, we've got a problem for Hollywood. But the official line from the voice recording was that Houston, we've had a problem. And the problem was resolved around the back of the moon where they'd got no communication and they decided that they had to head back to Earth.
That was Tom Hanks, by the way.
Sorry, Paul.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. Good one. Good one.
Yeah.
15 is up in this. They look like mountains, but they're actually the rim of a crater. The Apennine Mountains, they're called, but you can kind of see the sort of rises and falls of them. 16 in a pretty boring area down here. And 17, which is up near our Dawes crater, there's Dawes, there's 17, was the last mission, and they managed to stop it being 3 actual astronauts, and one of them was a geologist because there's great interest in getting geology information out of the moon. The plan from NASA was 3 more missions to land on the moon, and they got binned because of the American people got fed up with all of it going on. They lost interest in it. And the government had to concentrate on the Vietnam War and trying to get out of that one. So all the efforts went into other things. What the Apollo missions were powered by was the dirty great big rocket, which is still the most powerful rocket today, the Saturn V rocket. I bet there's some in the audience that have been to Florida and seen one on its side in there. The Saturn V rocket, 111 meters, 3,000 tons in weight, and a 1.6 million horsepower was its kind of rating. It might get replaced as the most powerful rocket later this year with the program that's going on at the moment, called the Artemis program. And they're supposed to be launching a replacement rocket as it goes later in this year. But I think a week or 2 ago, they failed in something that went on. When I stopped sharing,